Alpha King traps the Omega in a pact of power, yet her untouched magic awakens an ancient throne. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Emma Dawson had always known that her life was never meant to be extraordinary. Born an Omega, the lowest rank in the pack, she was often ignored and ridiculed. Her family had never been kind, and her lack of the characteristic scent that most Omegas had only made her feel more like an outsider. She spent most of her days in silence, trying not to draw attention to herself. The pack leaders saw her as a burden, an anomaly that didn't quite belong. Emma's world was a place of shadows and whispered gossip. Her only solace came from the forest, where she wandered alone, away from the judging eyes of the pack. It was there, on one of her solitary walks, that her life would change forever. She was wandering near the old stone ruins, the moonlight casting an eerie glow over the crumbling walls, when she heard a noise. It was a soft rustle, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. Emma's heart skipped a beat, and she stepped cautiously toward the sound. What she saw took her breath away. A massive figure, cloaked in darkness, lay collapsed on the ground. The figure was injured, bleeding from several deep cuts. Emma's first instinct was to turn away, to run as far as she could. But something in the air, something deep inside her, told her not to. She stepped forward, her hands trembling. She had no magic, no healing ability, but her heart wouldn't let her ignore the wounded being before her. She gently reached out, touching the stranger's arm. A shock of warmth surged through her, and for the first time in her life, Emma felt a power awaken within her, something ancient, something raw. She knelt beside the figure, and as her hands hovered over the wounds, a soft glow emanated from her fingertips. The air around them seemed to hum with energy. The figure stirred, groaning in pain, and Emma's heart raced. She didn't know what she was doing, but her body seemed to know exactly how to heal. As the glow grew brighter, the stranger's wounds began to close, the blood stopping and the skin knitting itself together. The stranger's eyes fluttered open, revealing a striking shade of silver, eyes that glowed with an unearthly intensity. He stared at her for a long moment, and Emma felt a deep shiver run down her spine. "Who are you?" she whispered, but the figure didn't answer. Instead, he pushed himself up, using her shoulder for support. His strength was incredible, his body solid and imposing. I owe you my life," he said, his voice gravelly, like he hadn't spoken in years. His gaze locked with hers, and for a brief moment, Emma felt a strange connection between them, something that went beyond words. But before she could speak again, the man's eyes widened in recognition. "You are the one," he muttered, almost to himself. Emma frowned, confused. "The one?" she asked. The man nodded slowly, his lips curling into a faint smile. "Yes. You are the one destined to break the curse and claim the throne." With those words, Emma's world tilted on its axis. She had no idea what he was talking about, but the sense of destiny, of something far greater than herself, had already begun to settle in her heart. Emma stood frozen as the man's words echoed in her mind. "You are the one destined to break the curse and claim the throne." She barely had time to process his words before he stood up fully, towering over her. The power emanating from him was undeniable, and despite the fact that she had just saved him, Emma could feel the weight of his presence, almost as if the very earth beneath her feet had shifted. The stranger, now fully healed, stretched his arms, his eyes still glowing with that otherworldly light. He looked at her with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. "I don't understand," Emma whispered, feeling the pressure of his gaze upon her. The man, or rather the Alpha King, finally spoke, his voice deep and commanding. "You don't need to understand yet," he said, his tone carrying an air of finality. "But you will, in time." Emma could feel her heart racing, the adrenaline from healing him still pumping through her veins. She stepped back instinctively, wanting to distance herself from the powerful stranger, yet something inside her pulled her toward him. "Who are you?" she managed to ask, her voice shaking. The Alpha King turned his head slightly, his silver eyes flickering with something she couldn't quite read. "I am Alexander Thornridge, Alpha King of the Northern Territories," he said, his voice steady and unwavering. "And you, Emma Dawson, are the one I've been searching for." Emma's mind raced. How did he know her name? She had never seen him before, nor had anyone in the pack ever spoken of an Alpha King who could possess such power. "What do you mean?" she asked, her confusion growing. "Why me?" "Because," he replied, his eyes now focused intently on her, "you are the key to breaking the curse that has haunted my family for generations." The words hit Emma like a thunderclap. She was not just any ordinary Omega, as she had always believed. No, she was something far more important. But the weight of what he said was overwhelming, and she struggled to comprehend it. Alexander took a step closer to her, his presence overwhelming, yet somehow, she didn't feel fear. Instead, there was a strange sense of calm in his proximity. "You will be tested, Emma," he said. "The curse that binds me is one of power and blood, a bond forged in darkness. But only your magic untapped, untouched, can unlock the throne and free my people." Emma felt a surge of uncertainty wash over her. She had no magic. Or at least, she didn't think she did. The power she had felt when healing him had been nothing but an instinctual act, not something she had consciously controlled. "I have no magic," Emma whispered, almost to herself. "How can I help you?" Alexander's lips curled into a faint smile. "You don't know it yet, but you do. The magic within you has been waiting for the right moment to awaken. And now, that moment is here." Emma was silent, her mind spinning with questions she didn't have the answers to. She had always felt different, as if something was missing within her, but now it seemed as though that something was more than just an empty feeling. It was power, waiting to be unlocked. Alexander took another step toward her, his eyes softening for a moment. "The throne you'll awaken is not just mine, Emma. It's the throne of a kingdom that has been lost to time, hidden away in shadows. And only you can bring it back to its rightful place." Emma's heart raced at his words. She had always imagined a life of quiet solitude, of simply surviving in a world that had never quite accepted her. But now, she was thrust into something far greater, something that could change everything. Alexander's gaze softened even more, though his voice remained steady. "I know this is a lot to take in. But I need you to trust me. Together, we can break the curse and restore what was once lost." Emma nodded slowly, still processing his words. She didn't understand everything, but something inside her stirred at the thought of a destiny far bigger than anything she had ever imagined. She had always thought she was just an ordinary Omega, but now, it seemed like she was the one who could change the fate of an entire kingdom. "I'll help you," Emma said, her voice steady, though her heart raced with uncertainty and anticipation. "I don't know how, but I'll try." Alexander's expression softened, and for the first time, Emma saw a flicker of something like hope in his eyes. "That's all I ask," he said, his voice low and full of promise. "Together, we will awaken the throne." Emma stood silently as Alexander's words sank into her mind, the weight of them pressing down on her chest. She had never been one to seek out greatness, never imagined she could be the key to something so monumental. A throne, a curse, and a kingdom lost to time, none of it made sense, yet she felt an undeniable pull toward it. "How do I even begin?" she whispered, more to herself than to him. Alexander studied her for a long moment, his silver eyes softening in a way that made her heart flutter. "We start with trust," he said simply, his voice low and steady. "I will guide you, but you must be willing to accept the power within you." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had never been good at trusting others, especially someone so powerful and mysterious. But there was something about Alexander's presence, something that made her feel as though, for the first time in her life, she was part of something bigger. "I don't know if I'm ready," she admitted, her voice small. "I've never had magic. I don't know how to control anything." Alexander took a step closer to her, his posture relaxed yet commanding. "Magic isn't about control, Emma. It's about surrendering to it. Letting it flow through you, unblocked. Only then will you understand your true potential." Emma looked up at him, uncertainty still clouding her thoughts. "And what if I fail?" she asked, the fear of failure creeping into her voice. "You won't fail," Alexander replied confidently. "Because you are already stronger than you realize. You just need to believe in yourself." His words wrapped around her like a protective shield, easing some of the tension that had been building in her chest. But the doubts remained, lingering in the back of her mind. "I've spent my whole life being told I was worthless," she said quietly, her eyes dropping to the ground. "How do I change that?" Alexander's gaze softened even further, and for a brief moment, Emma saw a glimpse of something more in him, a depth of emotion that mirrored her own inner struggle. "You are not worthless, Emma," he said gently, his voice firm with conviction. "You are the key to unlocking a future where you are not defined by your past. You are destined for more, and it is time for you to claim it." Emma felt a shiver run down her spine at his words. It was like a spark had ignited within her, a fire that had been smoldering for years, waiting for the right moment to burn bright. She wasn't sure how to explain it, but something in her had changed. The weight of Alexander's gaze, the intensity of his words, it was all pushing her forward, toward something she had never imagined. "All right," she said, her voice trembling but determined. "I'll try. I'll trust you." Alexander nodded, his expression serious yet filled with something almost like pride. "Good," he said, his voice steady. "Now, we begin." As they walked toward the ancient ruins, Emma felt a new sense of purpose building inside her. It wasn't just about healing Alexander or breaking the curse anymore. It was about discovering who she truly was and what she was capable of. And for the first time in her life, she felt like she was finally stepping into the person she was meant to be. The journey ahead would not be easy. But with Alexander at her side, she knew she wasn't alone. Together, they would awaken the throne, and she would finally understand the magic that had always been inside her. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: Emma was no longer just an Omega. She was a force waiting to be unleashed. The journey to the ruins was a quiet one, with only the distant howls of wolves in the night accompanying Emma and Alexander as they walked. The air was cool, and the night seemed to stretch endlessly ahead of them, but Emma's heart beat with a newfound rhythm, a feeling that something monumental was about to happen. As they neared the ancient stone structures, Emma's breath caught in her throat. The ruins looked even older up close, their surfaces worn smooth by time, but there was an undeniable aura of power about them. She could feel it. This place was important, not just for Alexander, but for her as well. Alexander, walking beside her, had been quiet since their conversation earlier. His presence was commanding, yet somehow reassuring. He moved with a purpose, and Emma couldn't help but notice the subtle way he seemed to radiate strength, despite his earlier vulnerability. He was a king in every sense, and the thought of being part of his world, of understanding her place in it, made her both nervous and exhilarated. "This is where it begins," Alexander said, his voice breaking the silence as they reached the center of the ruins. Emma glanced around, taking in the weathered stone pillars and the strange markings that adorned them. "What happens here?" she asked, her voice soft, but filled with curiosity. Alexander turned to face her, his silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "This is the place where the throne lies dormant, waiting to be claimed," he said, his tone serious. "It is where the magic will awaken, where you will awaken." Emma frowned, trying to make sense of his words. "But how? I'm just me. I don't understand how this can all be true." Alexander stepped closer, his presence overwhelming but comforting. "You've always had this power, Emma. It's been inside you all along, buried beneath the surface. The magic is tied to you, to your bloodline. The throne can only be awakened by someone pure of heart, someone who has been marked by fate. That is why it is you." Emma's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to argue, to say that she was no different from anyone else. But the way he looked at her, like she was the key to something larger than herself, made her question everything she had ever believed. "So, what do I do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do I just sit here?" Alexander gave a small smile, shaking his head. "No. You don't sit here. You stand, and you claim what is yours." He gestured toward the center of the ruins, where a large stone throne sat, its surface cracked but still imposing. This throne is where you will make your stand. You must stand before it, close your eyes, and allow the magic to take over. Emma hesitated. It all sounded so unreal. But as she gazed at the throne, something deep within her stirred, a pull she couldn't ignore. It was as if the throne itself was calling her. With a deep breath, she nodded. "All right," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. "I'll do it." Slowly, she moved toward the throne, feeling a strange sensation in her chest as she stepped closer. The air around her seemed to hum with energy, and for a moment, she could feel the weight of centuries pressing down on her. She reached out and touched the cold stone of the throne, her fingers tingling as she made contact. At first, nothing happened. But then, as if on cue, a surge of warmth spread through her body, radiating from the throne and flowing into her veins. She gasped as the magic began to awaken, a power she had never felt before flooding through her. It was like fire and ice, both consuming and freeing at the same time. Her body trembled as the energy coursed through her, and she had to fight to keep her balance. But even as the power swirled around her, Emma felt a sense of clarity. This was it. This was what she had been destined for. The throne was no longer just an ancient relic, it was alive, and it was a part of her. Slowly, the magic began to settle, and Emma opened her eyes to find the throne glowing with a soft, ethereal light. She could feel it now, the connection between herself and the throne, between herself and the ancient power that had been dormant for so long. "It's done," Alexander's voice was soft, but there was a note of awe in it. Emma turned to him, her heart racing. "Is it really done?" she asked, her voice trembling. Alexander nodded, his eyes filled with pride. "Yes. You have awakened the throne, Emma. You have unlocked the power that was always meant to be yours." For a moment, Emma stood there, letting the gravity of the moment sink in. She had done it. She had awakened the magic, and she had unlocked a power beyond her comprehension. But even as the weight of her newfound strength settled within her, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. There was still so much to learn, so much to understand. And with Alexander by her side, she knew that the journey ahead would be nothing short of extraordinary. As Emma stood before the glowing throne, she could feel the weight of her destiny settling around her like a heavy cloak. The power coursing through her was intoxicating, and yet, it felt foreign, like a part of her that she had never truly known. Her mind raced with questions, but before she could gather her thoughts, she felt a presence behind her. Alexander stepped closer, his shadow falling across her, his silver eyes reflecting the light of the throne. "You've done it," he said quietly, his voice a mixture of awe and something deeper, something she couldn't quite place. Emma turned to face him, her heart still racing from the surge of magic she had just experienced. "But how?" "I didn't." "I don't understand how this is possible," she confessed, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Alexander gave her a small, reassuring smile. "It was always within you, Emma. You just needed to trust yourself, to let go of the fear that's held you back for so long." Emma looked down at her hands, still tingling with the magic that had awakened within her. She had always believed she was nothing special, just another Omega in a world that only saw her as weak. But now, standing in front of the throne, she could feel the truth in Alexander's words. The magic had always been there, buried beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to emerge. "I didn't know. I didn't know I was capable of this," Emma whispered, still trying to process what had just happened. Alexander stepped closer, his gaze intense but kind. "You've always been capable, Emma. You've always had the strength to shape your own fate." For a long moment, Emma didn't know what to say. She was still trying to make sense of the fact that she had just unlocked a power she had never known she had. But in that silence, something else began to stir within her, hope. Hope for a future she had never dared to imagine. "What happens now?" Emma finally asked, her voice steadying as she looked up at Alexander. "Now, we prepare," he replied. "The magic you've awakened is only the beginning. There is much to learn, much to control. But we will face it together." He turned toward the throne, his hand resting lightly on the stone as he glanced back at Emma. The throne is not just a symbol of power, it's a key. And now that it's been awakened, it will draw others to it. People who will try to take that power for themselves. Emma's chest tightened at his words. She had known there would be challenges ahead, but hearing it so plainly from Alexander made the reality of their situation hit her like a wave. "We have to be ready," she said, the determination in her voice matching the newfound strength she felt. Alexander nodded. "We will be," he said firmly. "But it will take more than just magic. It will take trust, and it will take unity. You must learn to wield this power with a steady hand, to lead with the heart of a queen." Emma nodded slowly, her resolve hardening. She had never imagined herself as a queen, but in this moment, standing before the throne with Alexander by her side, she could feel the weight of it settling upon her shoulders. It was a burden, yes, but it was also an honor. "I'm ready," she said, her voice clear. "I'll do whatever it takes." Alexander smiled, a look of pride flashing in his eyes. "I know you will. And I'll be here to help you every step of the way." Together, they stood before the throne, the weight of the ancient power now shared between them. Emma knew the road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time, she felt certain of one thing: she wasn't alone. With Alexander's guidance and the magic now awakening inside her, she would face whatever challenges came their way, and she would do it with the strength and courage she had always possessed, even if she had never recognized it until now. As the days passed, Emma found herself immersed in the teachings of Alexander. The journey to understanding her newfound magic was not a simple one. Every lesson was a test, not just of her abilities but of her inner strength. She spent hours each day practicing with Alexander, learning to channel the raw power that now surged through her veins. Sometimes, the power would overwhelm her, and she would feel herself on the edge of losing control. But Alexander was always there, guiding her, steadying her, and teaching her to harness the magic with a calm and focused mind. The ancient throne, the center of their destiny, became a place of refuge as well as challenge. Each time Emma approached it, she felt the weight of the throne's history and its significance. It was a reminder that the power she wielded was not just for her, but for an entire kingdom that had been lost to time. As she stood before the throne one evening, her hand resting on its cold surface, she felt a surge of magic unlike anything she had experienced before. It was as if the throne itself was awakening further, responding to her touch, calling her to fulfill her purpose. She closed her eyes, focusing on the power within her. The warmth spread through her body, and for a brief moment, she felt an overwhelming sense of connection to the throne, to the land, and to the people who once ruled over it. When she opened her eyes, she saw Alexander watching her from a distance. He had been silent for some time, observing her growth with a watchful eye. His presence was a constant source of support and strength, yet Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility growing within her. "I feel it," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "The throne, the magic, it's calling to me." Alexander nodded, his expression unreadable, yet there was a glimmer of pride in his eyes. "Yes," he replied, stepping closer. "The throne is more than just a seat of power. It is a reflection of your strength, Emma. You were chosen, not just by fate, but by the very magic that resides in this land. It recognizes you now." Emma's heart raced at his words. She had never thought of herself as special, never imagined that she could be the one to restore a kingdom, to awaken a throne. But with each passing day, the connection between herself and the throne grew stronger. She was no longer just an Omega, she was the key to something much larger than herself. "What do I do now?" she asked, her voice filled with both determination and uncertainty. "Now," Alexander said, his voice steady, "you begin to lead. The magic you wield is powerful, but it is not enough on its own. You must learn to use it wisely, to guide the people who will look to you for strength." Emma felt the weight of his words sink in. Leadership was not something she had ever thought of for herself, but now, it seemed inevitable. She was the one who had awakened the throne, the one who would have to restore the kingdom. The thought of it was overwhelming, but there was also a quiet resolve within her. She could do this. She had to. "I'm ready," she said, her voice firm with newfound conviction. Alexander smiled, a proud glint in his eyes. I know you are, he replied. And I will be with you every step of the way. Together, they stood before the throne, and Emma felt the full weight of her destiny resting on her shoulders. The road ahead would not be easy, but with Alexander by her side and the magic now flowing through her, she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The kingdom had waited for centuries for someone like her, and now, she would not let them down. Days turned into weeks as Emma and Alexander continued their training. With every passing moment, Emma felt herself growing stronger, more in tune with the magic that pulsed through her. It was as if her very essence was being shaped by the throne she had awakened, its ancient power merging with her own. But despite her progress, she could sense the challenges that lay ahead. Alexander had been teaching her not just how to harness her magic but also how to lead. Each lesson was as much about wisdom and patience as it was about power. He explained the responsibilities of a ruler, how every decision would affect not just the people but the very balance of magic itself. Leadership, he had told her one evening, as they sat in the dim glow of the firelight, is not about wielding power. It is about understanding when to use it and when to let it go. Emma absorbed every word, knowing that her destiny was tied not just to her own strength, but to the future of the kingdom she was meant to restore. As she continued to train, she felt a weight pressing on her chest, a mixture of fear and determination. She was no longer the helpless Omega she had once been, but the weight of leadership was heavy, and she couldn't shake the feeling that there were forces at work beyond her understanding. One night, as they stood at the edge of the ancient ruins, looking out at the vast expanse of the kingdom, Emma turned to Alexander with a question that had been lingering in her mind for days. What happens if I fail? She asked, her voice barely a whisper against the night. Alexander's expression softened, his silver eyes reflecting the starlight. Failure is not an option, he said firmly, though there was a gentleness to his words. But even if you stumble, it is not the end. It is how you rise that defines you. Emma nodded slowly, taking comfort in his words, though the fear of failure still lingered in her heart. The road ahead was uncertain, and she couldn't help but wonder if she was truly ready for the weight of the throne. But as the weeks passed, Emma began to feel a quiet sense of confidence building within her. The throne, the magic, it was a part of her now. She could feel its pulse in her veins, urging her forward, guiding her steps. Yet, despite her growing power, there was still so much to learn, so many unanswered questions. As she stood before the throne one evening, the soft hum of magic surrounding her, Emma felt the pull of something greater. It was as if the throne was calling her to something beyond what she had already done. It was as though there were secrets hidden within its ancient stones, waiting to be uncovered. What else is there? She asked aloud, her voice carrying on the night breeze. Alexander, who had been watching her from a distance, approached silently, his presence filling the space around her. There is more, he said, his voice low and knowing. The throne has many layers. Many secrets. And as you grow, Emma, you will uncover them one by one. Emma looked at him, her heart racing with both anticipation and fear. But what are they? What do they mean for me? Alexander placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch grounding her. They are the keys to your true power, Emma. But the path to unlocking them is not easy. You must learn to trust not just the magic, but yourself. And the people around you. Emma looked out at the kingdom, feeling the weight of her responsibility settle deeper into her bones. She wasn't just awakening magic, she was awakening a future. Her future, and the future of the people who depended on her. The stakes were higher than she had ever imagined, and as much as she feared what was to come, she knew one thing for sure, she would not face it alone. Alexander would be by her side, guiding her every step of the way. And together, they would unlock the secrets of the throne and restore the kingdom to its rightful place. The days seemed to blend into one another as Emma continued her training with Alexander. The weight of her newfound responsibility was heavier than she had ever imagined. Every lesson, every moment, was a reminder of the power she held, and the kingdom that was waiting for her to restore it. But despite her growing strength, doubt still lingered in her heart. She had learned to control her magic, but the more she unlocked, the more questions arose. What did the throne truly represent? What was it that she had yet to discover? One evening, after another long day of practice, Emma stood alone in the ancient ruins, the place where everything had started. The throne sat before her, still glowing with that otherworldly light, and she couldn't help but feel drawn to it once again. She had spent so much time learning to control the magic, but now, standing here, she realized that she had only scratched the surface. There was more to the throne, more to the magic, and more to her destiny than she had ever imagined. "What is it that you're hiding?" she whispered, reaching out to touch the cold stone. As her fingers brushed the surface, a wave of energy surged through her, and for a brief moment, she saw flashes of images, memories, or perhaps visions, flashing before her eyes. There were scenes of a grand castle, of people kneeling before a ruler, of battles fought and won, of a kingdom lost to time. And then, there was a figure, someone familiar, someone with silver eyes, standing beside her, guiding her, but also carrying the weight of a curse. "Alexander," Emma breathed, her heart pounding in her chest. She pulled her hand away from the throne, gasping for breath as the vision faded. It had been so real, so vivid, as if the throne itself had shared its memories with her. But what did it all mean? As she turned, she saw Alexander approaching from the shadows, his silhouette framed by the moonlight. His presence was always steady, always grounded, but tonight, there was something different about him. A seriousness in his step, a quiet urgency in his eyes. "Emma," he called softly, his voice carrying across the quiet ruins. "You're learning quickly." She nodded, still feeling the remnants of the vision in her mind. "I felt something," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "A vision. A memory. Of a kingdom, of you. I don't understand." Alexander stopped in front of her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, there was a long silence between them, as if he was weighing his words carefully. "It's not just a throne, Emma," he said, his voice low, almost solemn. "It's a link to the past, to the kingdom that once was. And to the curse that has haunted my family for generations." Emma's heart skipped a beat. The curse. The same curse that had caused the kingdom's fall, the same curse that Alexander had spoken of before. She felt a wave of understanding crash over her, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. "The throne, it's not just about power," she said slowly. "It's about the past. It's about breaking the curse, isn't it?" Alexander nodded, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "Yes," he said quietly. "But it's more than that. The throne holds the key to unlocking the future. Your future, and the future of the kingdom. But it is not just about magic. It's about leadership. It's about understanding the weight of the crown, the lives it touches." Emma took a deep breath, her gaze falling to the throne once again. "And I'm supposed to be the one to lead them," she said softly. Alexander stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You are not alone in this, Emma. You have the strength to lead. You've already proven that. But you must remember, true leadership comes from the heart. It's not about ruling with power alone. It's about compassion, wisdom, and trust." Emma met his gaze, the weight of his words sinking in. She had spent so much time fearing her power, fearing what she might become, but now she realized that she had the ability to be more than just a ruler. She could be the leader the kingdom needed. "I'll do it," she said quietly, her voice filled with determination. "I'll break the curse. I'll restore the kingdom." Alexander smiled, a warmth in his eyes that Emma hadn't seen before. "I knew you would," he said, his voice filled with pride. "And together, we will do it." The night air seemed to shift around them, as if the very land itself had heard her vow. Emma knew the road ahead would be difficult. There would be challenges, enemies, and obstacles along the way. But with Alexander by her side, and the magic of the throne within her grasp, she felt ready to face whatever came next. The kingdom had waited long enough, and Emma was no longer the helpless Omega she once was. She was the future of the throne. And she would not let it fall again. The following weeks passed quickly as Emma immersed herself further into the complex responsibilities of her role. The throne, once a distant and mysterious force, had now become a constant reminder of what lay ahead. With Alexander's guidance, she grew not just in her magical abilities, but in her understanding of leadership. The weight of the crown, metaphorically speaking, felt heavier each day. Emma found herself thinking more about the people of the kingdom, their hopes, their struggles, and their need for a ruler who would restore the balance they had lost. One morning, after a particularly intense training session, Alexander pulled Emma aside. "You've made great progress," he said, his voice as steady as ever. "But there is something we need to prepare for." Emma raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Alexander turned, his gaze focused on the horizon. "The kingdom is not as it once was. There are factions, both within and outside the kingdom, who will not accept the throne's awakening without a fight. The magic is powerful, but it can also be dangerous. You must be ready for those who will seek to control it, who will try to use it for their own gain." Emma felt a knot form in her stomach. She had always been focused on learning the magic, but the reality of ruling was beginning to settle in. I thought if I awakened the throne, everything would just fall into place," she admitted. "That the kingdom would return to what it once was." Alexander shook his head, his silver eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "It will return, Emma. But not without effort. Not without sacrifice. People will test you, they will question your claim, and they will try to take what you have awakened. It is your strength, your heart, that will prove you worthy." Emma nodded slowly, absorbing his words. She had always known that nothing worthwhile came without its challenges, but this felt different. This was the fate of an entire kingdom. "What should I do?" she asked, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "You must unite the people," Alexander said, turning to face her fully. "The throne cannot stand alone. You are its heart, but the kingdom needs its leaders, its citizens, to stand with you. Find those who will support you, those who believe in your cause. And do not hesitate to make the hard choices." Emma took a deep breath, feeling the gravity of his words settle in her chest. She had always been unsure of her ability to lead, but now, it was undeniable. She had the magic, she had the throne, but the kingdom was far more complex than she had ever imagined. "I understand," she said finally, her voice firm with newfound resolve. "I'll do what it takes." Alexander's lips curved into a faint smile. "I know you will." Over the next several days, Emma worked tirelessly, meeting with various leaders within the kingdom, seeking allies and support. It was not easy, many questioned her, some doubted her, but others saw the strength in her, the same strength Alexander had recognized from the beginning. As she stood before a gathering of influential figures one afternoon, Emma felt a sense of clarity she had not felt before. This was her moment. This was the beginning of the change she had been meant to bring. "I stand before you not just as an Omega, not just as a magic wielder," Emma began, her voice rising with conviction. "But as your leader, your queen. The throne has chosen me, and I have chosen to lead you. We will rebuild this kingdom, not with force or fear, but with unity, with strength, and with love for the land we all share." The room fell silent, and for a moment, Emma felt a flash of doubt. But then, one by one, heads began to nod. The room filled with murmurs of agreement, and Emma knew she had taken the first step toward uniting her people. As she left the gathering, Alexander was waiting for her outside. "Well done," he said, his voice warm with approval. "The people are beginning to see you for who you truly are." Emma smiled, but the weight of the future was never far from her mind. There was still much to do, and not all the challenges had been met. But for the first time, she felt certain that she was on the right path. Together, with Alexander by her side, Emma would face whatever came next. She would lead, and she would make sure the throne she had awakened was a beacon of hope, not just for her, but for the kingdom she was destined to restore.